She had just given birth, and her body was still shaking from the shock. For a minute, she couldn't recognize who was in the room or who was talking to her. Her husband kept telling her to check the baby, which made her worry. Was there something wrong with the newborn baby? His face was stern and anxious. Something was worrying him. But before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. Lauren Kirkson had never felt more excited and nervous in her life. She was pregnant with her first child, and every day seemed like an eternity as she eagerly anticipated the arrival of their little bundle of joy. Her husband, 37-year-old Tommy, a freelance financial consultant, shared in her excitement, and together, they planned and prepared for the upcoming arrival with meticulous detail. Their small home in Yellowbridge, New Jersey had turned into a baby haven. 33-year-old Lauren, a fifth-grade teacher, stood in front of the mirror, gently caressing her growing belly with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. She was pregnant with her first child, and every flutter and kick from within filled her with indescribable joy. Beside her, Tommy, her husband, beamed with pride, his hand resting protectively over hers. From nursery decor to baby names, they were a team, eager to embrace parenthood together. Despite Tommy's curiosity, Lauren had decided early on that she didn't want to know the sex of the baby. She believed in the magic of surprises. And besides, as long as their little one was healthy, that was all that mattered to her. She and her husband, Tommy, were over the moon with excitement, eagerly awaiting the arrival of their first child. Despite Tommy's curiosity, Lauren was adamant about keeping the baby's sex a surprise. She reveled in the mystery, feeling a deep intuition that they were expecting a girl. But Tommy, ever the eager father-to-be, couldn't resist the temptation to know. Secretly, he visited the doctor, hoping to unravel the mystery. But the doctor was under strict instructions not to divulge the sex until birth. Lauren had no idea. As the days passed, Lauren busied herself with nesting, filling their home with warmth and love in preparation for their new addition. She couldn't help but indulge in pink hues and frilly decorations, convinced that they were welcoming a baby girl into their lives. One day, when Lauren was busy preparing for their upcoming baby shower, Tommy vanished without explanation. She didn't think much of it at first, assuming he had errands to run or needed some time to himself. Little did she know, Tommy had a secret mission of his own. As they attended the scans, Lauren held on to the belief that the baby's sex should remain a mystery until birth. But Tommy, ever the curious one, couldn't resist the temptation to find out. He wanted to know if they were having a boy or a girl. He would have to come back without Lauren. He slipped into the doctor's office, his heart pounding with anticipation and nerves. As the doctor revealed the long-awaited secret, Tommy's jaw dropped in disbelief. It was not what he had expected, but the news filled him with an overwhelming sense of happiness. He was shocked at first, but soon filled with happiness knowing they were going to have a healthy baby. Tommy returned home, unable to contain his excitement, and resumed helping Lauren prepare for their little one's arrival. It took him everything to keep his mouth shut, on his own mission. Meanwhile, Lauren went about her day, completely unaware of the bombshell awaiting her. She hummed tunes to the baby, carefully arranging tiny onesies and arranging flowers for the shower. But as the hours passed and Tommy remained absent, a flicker of concern gnawed at her. Where had he gone? He knew that she couldn't walk up the stairs without him. When he finally returned home, Tommy was greeted with a flurry of questions from Lauren. "It took me a whole extra 20 minutes to get up the stairs," she complained. But he deflected her inquiries with a nervous laugh, claiming he had lost track of time while running errands. Yet, his mind raced with the weight of the secret he now bore alone. That night, as they lay in bed, Tommy struggled to find sleep. his thoughts consumed by the knowledge he held. How could he keep such a monumental secret from Lauren, the woman he loved more than anything in the world? The weight of his silence pressed heavily on his chest, leaving him torn between the joy of knowing and the guilt of keeping it from her. As the moon cast its soft glow through the window, Tommy vowed to find a way to navigate the delicate balance between his desire to share the news with Lauren and his promise to respect her wishes. For now, though, the secret remained his burden to bear, a silent bond between father and child, waiting to be revealed in its own time. But that night, something terrible happened. Tommy lay beside his wife as she read through a parenting book. She had the slightest smile on her face, clearly excited for what was to come. Lauren had been waiting to become a mother for so long. But beside her, Tommy was anything but happy. His face was twisted in concern. He couldn't help but regret what he had done. He felt like a terrible husband, but nothing would be as bad as what would happen a few days later. Before they knew it, Lauren was in her final few days of pregnancy. At this point, she had ensured that she was ready to become a mother. But in recent days, something changed. She had this strange gut feeling that something was wrong, but she couldn't quite explain it. Her husband had been distant and quiet for days, and she couldn't understand why. He was supposed to be excited, but that night, something terrible would happen. That day started like any other. Lauren awoke at 7 a.m. and took a long, cool shower. At 9 months pregnant, she always felt hot. But by the time she left the bathroom, Tommy was nowhere to be seen. This was strange. Usually, he would still be in bed. Lauren didn't think much of it at first. She dried her hair and got dressed, but when she went downstairs, she found something concerning. When she walked into the kitchen, she expected to find her husband by the coffee machine, preparing himself a latte. But the house was quiet. "Honey?" She called through the quieter-than-usual house, but there was no response. She walked toward the front. That same terrible gut feeling crept its way into her heart once again. But then she saw something by the front door. Right underneath the key rack stood a small table beside the front door. That was where she saw the small piece of folded paper. Her heart sank. That wasn't there the night before. Slowly, she approached the folded note, wondering what he, husband, had written down. With slightly sweaty palms, she grabbed the small piece of paper and unfolded it, but she was not prepared for what she would find. She instantly noticed her husband's handwriting. While she was in the shower, he decided to write a note to his wife. She frowned when she read what it said. "I need some time to myself. I'm going out. Call me if you need anything. Love you," it read. This concerned Lauren. Her husband had been acting strange for a while now. Was it possible that he was dreading the birth of the baby? But that day would soon turn tragic. Lauren sighed to herself. Tommy hadn't been himself in a long time, and she was starting to think that it was her fault. She placed the note where she had found it and walked toward the living room. She didn't want to call Tommy, thinking that he needed his space. But as she sat down on the couch, she felt a strange, stinging pain in her abdomen. But it was only for a moment. If only she knew what was going on. Lauren winced when the strange feeling first appeared. It was unlike anything she had ever felt before. Luckily, the pain vanished a second later. Initially freaked out, Lauren tried to convince herself that it was nothing to worry about. Perhaps it was just some kind of cramp, she thought. As her day continued, she forgot all about the strange feeling. It wasn't until that evening that she got a terrible reminder. It was 6 p.m., and Tommy still hadn't come home. Lauren was starting to wonder where he was, and if he was okay. He usually never stayed out this late. She was sitting in front of the television, chewing her nails as she waited to hear his keys in the door. But she never did. It was just after 6 that the same weird feeling as before popped up. But this time, it was 1,000 times worse. Lauren curled in pain as she sat on the couch, a terrible sound leaving her mouth. She had never felt anything quite so painful before. But this time, the pain didn't go away. Suddenly, she was beyond terrified. What was happening to her baby? She was all alone. But she knew she had to do something. It took all of her strength to crawl across the floor and call an ambulance. The ambulance was there in no time, but Lauren was still all alone at home, curled up on the living room floor. As soon as the paramedics found Lauren, they strapped her up to all kinds of machines and asked her 100 different questions. She was scared. Lauren was crying for her husband as they rushed her to the hospital. What if something was happening to their baby? Tommy was having a heart-to-heart conversation with his brother-in-law about the gender of the baby and what he'd done. For weeks, he'd felt terrible about going to the doctor without Lauren's consent. He'd felt so guilty that he could hardly look his wife in the face. He was in the middle of a conversation when he got the call from the hospital. That was when he got into his car and rushed right over. That was the most terrifying night of Lauren and Tommy's lives. When he arrived at the hospital, Lauren was in a private room, crying to herself. "Honey, are you okay?" he asked as he rushed through the door. He sat beside his wife and held her. She was so glad he was there. She didn't even think about the note. The nurse said the doctor would be in to speak to me soon. But as those words left her mouth, the doctor walked in. The man was holding Lauren's folder in his hand as he walked into the room. He could see the fear in her eyes. He smiled in an attempt to ease her nerves. "Ma'am, have you ever heard of Braxton Hicks? It's these contractions you get when your body is preparing for childbirth," he explained. "It's also known as false labor. You and your baby are okay. I suggest you get some rest before the big day. It will be soon," the doctor said. Lauren let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. She and Tommy were beyond relieved. They went home, grateful that everything was okay. That night, they held on to each other in bed, happy to be by their side. Lauren could tell that a day to himself had helped Tommy. He was more affectionate than in the last few weeks. She was grateful. But just a few days later, the unexpected happened. Then came the day when Lauren's water broke and labor swept over her like a tidal wave of sensation. With Tommy's steady support, they left home, nerves tingling with anticipation and anxiety. When Lauren's water broke, the thrill of anticipation turned into the urgency of action. They rushed to the hospital, Lauren grimacing through contractions, Tommy holding her hand tightly. Lauren shifted uncomfortably in the hospital bed, clutching Tommy's hand tightly as another contraction rippled through her body. Sweat glistened on her forehead, her breaths coming in ragged gasps as the pain surged and ebbed. "Tommy, it hurts," she whispered, her voice strained with effort. "I know, babe, I know," Tommy murmured, his eyes filled with concern as he brushed a stray lock of hair from Lauren's forehead. "You're doing great. Just hang in there." Despite the pain, a wave of excitement surged through Lauren's heart. After months of anticipation and preparation, their baby was finally on the way. She couldn't wait to hold their little one in her arms, to marvel at the tiny fingers and toes, to experience the overwhelming rush of love that every parent talked about. But amidst the excitement, there lingered a flicker of apprehension. Lauren had chosen not to find out the sex of the baby during her scans, preferring the surprise when the moment arrived. However, Tommy had been curious, unable to resist the temptation to know. As the contractions intensified, Lauren's thoughts drifted to the pink clothes and decoration she had meticulously chosen for their nursery. Every detail had been planned with the assumption that they were having a girl. And deep down, Lauren couldn't shake the feeling that she was right. Hours passed in a blur of pain and anticipation until finally, with a final push, their baby entered the world. Lauren's heart soared with joy as she heard the tiny cries, tears of relief streaming down her cheeks. Hours stretched into eternity as Lauren labored, each contraction bringing her closer to meeting their precious baby. Her husband was right by her side, recording the whole birth. The exhausted mother tried to shove the camera out of her face as she blamed her husband for what he did to her. And then, finally, the moment arrived. A cry echoed through the room, a chorus of new life. Hours passed like a blur, filled with pain and anticipation. And finally, the moment arrived. The nurses placed their newborn in Lauren's arms, swaddled snugly in a receiving blanket. Tommy encouraged Lauren to unwrap the bundle so she could get a good look at their baby. Exhausted but elated, Lauren reached out for a baby as the nurses swaddled the tiny bundle in soft blankets. Tommy's voice was a beacon of reassurance as he urged her to take a closer look. The nurses carefully wrapped the baby in a receiving blanket before placing him in Lauren's arms. She gazed down at the bundle, her heart overflowing with love. But as she began to unwrap the blanket, confusion flickered across her features. With trembling hands, Lauren peeled back the layers of blankets, her heart pounding with anticipation. But as she uncovered the final layer, confusion flickered across her features. Another blanket lay beneath, shrouding their baby in mystery. She glanced up at Tommy, searching for answers in his eyes. But all she found was a mischievous smile playing on his lips. How could he play games on a day like this, she wondered, her heart a whirlwind of emotions. "Tommy, why is there another blanket underneath?" she asked, her voice trembling with uncertainty. She was in no mood for his childish antics. Tommy's smile widened, a mischievous glint in his eyes as he exchanged a knowing look with the nurses. "Just keep unwrapping, babe," he said, his voice filled with excitement. With trembling hands, Lauren continued to peel away the layers until finally she reached the bottom of the pile. And there, nestled in the center, was a white jumper adorned with a simple message. Confusion flickered in Lauren's eyes as she peeled back the layers of blankets. Tommy's smile was enigmatic as he watched her, anticipation evident in his eyes. With each layer removed, Lauren's heart raced faster. "Do I look like a boy?" Beneath the layers of blankets, Lauren uncovered a white jumper with a cryptic message embroidered on it. "Do I look like a boy?" it read, and Lauren's breath caught in her throat. She looked up at Tommy, her mind reeling with disbelief. The room seemed to hold its breath as the realization dawned on her. Tommy had known all along. They were having a boy. Lauren's breath caught in her throat as she stared at the words, her mind struggling to comprehend. And then, as realization dawned, a mix of emotions flooded her heart. "Tommy, what is this?" she stammered, her eyes wide with shock. But before Tommy could respond, the door burst open and their family members flooded into the room, their faces alight with excitement. "Surprise!" they exclaimed in unison, their laughter filling the air. And suddenly, it all made sense. Tommy had known all along, sneaking off to the doctor to satisfy his curiosity while keeping the secret from Lauren. And now, surrounded by their loved ones, they reveled in the joyous revelation. Lauren couldn't help but laugh through her tears, her heart overflowing with love for the man who had orchestrated such a memorable moment. And as she looked down at their precious baby boy, she knew that their journey was only just beginning. "Looks like we have some redecorating to do," she said with a grin, already envisioning the nursery transformed with shades of blue and splashes of adventure. And as they held their son close, Lauren knew that no matter what surprises awaited them, they would face them together. A family bound by love, laughter, and the occasional unexpected twist. Tears welled up in Lauren's eyes, a mixture of shock, joy, and disbelief flooding her senses. She turned to see her family members who had been in on the secret, smiling knowingly. Through her tears, Lauren managed to laugh, a mix of emotions bubbling within her. "You knew!" she exclaimed, looking at Tommy incredulously. She immediately saw the similarities on her son's face. Tommy nodded sheepishly, revealing he had captured the entire moment on video, intending to submit it to America's Funniest Home Videos. His mischievous grin softened Lauren's initial shock, and soon they were both laughing through tears. In that moment, as they gazed upon their newborn, Lauren realized that the true joy of parenthood lay not in the certainty of gender or the perfection of plans, but in the endless surprises and mysteries that awaited them on this journey of love and discovery. And as she held their precious baby close, she knew that their family was complete, no matter the twists and turns that lay ahead. As reality sank in, Lauren realized the nursery filled with pink decor would need a makeover. Most of their friends had bought gifts and toys for girls too. But she didn't mind, because her son would learn the best from both worlds. But in that moment, surrounded by love and laughter, she knew that no matter the color scheme, their son would be cherished beyond measure. And so, their journey into parenthood began, filled with surprises, laughter, and an abundance of love.